Would you risk being booted from the Paris Agreement, though? No country previously has weakened its nationally determined contribution.
I did see the Prime Minister this morning, Kieran, trying to suggest that Australia is going to be kicked out of the Paris Agreement if it doesn't meet its 2030 targets. What he failed to say was the United States is also looking like they won't achieve their 2030 targets, nor will the European Union. So I think it's going to be big news, I'm sure, in Washington that the Australian Prime Minister is announcing that suddenly the Biden administration is looking down the barrel of being booted from Paris. What the Prime Minister failed to say in his press conference today was the impact of their failed policy energy suite. I mean, right now, Australians are paying among the highest electricity prices in the world. We have the operator saying that the lights might go out as soon as summer. And by the way, Labor hasn't reduced emissions. So for all their talk, emissions today are no lower than they were when the coalition left office. So if there is going to be, and I believe there will be, a failure come 2030, the targets won't be met, that is entirely due to the Labor Party unilaterally setting these targets, plucking the number out of thin air from opposition, and then legislating them without having a plan to achieve it. And as time goes on, it is crystal clear that the centrepiece of their plan, which is the 82% renewables goal, is dead in the water. Not a chance in the world will it be achieved. We cannot find one energy expert that says it's doable. There's lots of people who are wishing for the best and hoping maybe, but honestly, right now, if you look at the scoreboard, at best they're running at half pace.
The most recent climate report suggested the government's on track for a 42% reduction in emissions, just 1% shy of the 43% by 2030. And the minister says that's before things like the Solar Sunshot program, the hydrogen plan, the National Reconstruction Fund initiatives. There are many other policies that will feed into that, the clean emissions, vehicle emission standards. Why are you so convinced they won't get there, Mr O'Brien?
Kieran, the Climate Change Authority, which is the new body established by this government, puts out an annual progress report. When it put out its report at the end of last year, it made it very clear that the government is not on track to reach its 2030 target. Now, I recognise that the department does modelling, and some of its scenarios, of course, has to assume that everything the government says is going to happen. I mean, that's part of their job. But even their best case scenario says that the government still does not reach 43%. And this is the problem. Not even the most optimistic scenario of the government's own department says they will meet the target. And all we are doing in opposition is we are holding the government to account. It is the government that basically locked Australia into a target without knowing how it's going to get there, how much it's going to cost, or who's going to pay for it. So this is entirely on the Albanese government. But you're right, the department themselves, they, on their best case scenario, says Australia still will not meet its 43% target.
What would be your message if you do win the election and Mr Dutton wins as Climate Minister? If you win, what would you say to our neighbours in the Pacific about your less ambitious goals?
We will be as ambitious as we can, but we'll be contained by what's achievable. And we'll be honest and transparent. And that's what we've seen over this weekend on this very topic. And we've also seen complete transparency and openness on the part of the coalition about our approach to energy. It's why we talk about the need to have a balanced mix of energy, including renewables, gas and zero emissions nuclear energy as coal exits the system. Ultimately, reality catches up with you, Kieran, and it's catching up right now with the Albanese government, whether it be our international partners, the Pacific and beyond, or the Australian people. We will continue to shoot straight, be open and honest with the Australian people. Peter Dutton always does that, as is his team. unfortunately, we don't see the same from Anthony Albanese and his.
Consistent with that, just finally, with open and honesty and transparency, when would you set a 2030 target? Because you said it would be more ambitious than 26 to 28%. When will we see your number?
When we can do the right degree of modelling, Kieran, because one of the criticisms we've had about Labor's setting their target at 43% is they hadn't done any modelling. Indeed, even on coming to government,
Will it be before the election?
We were asking them at least get Treasury, get the Department, get the Productivity Commission to do the modelling, to tell the Australian people what's going to be the impact on jobs, on prices. They haven't done that. Now, instinctively, my view is that unless you've done that degree of work, then you can't just make these things up. This has a direct impact on Australians' way of life, on their jobs. It's why we're seeing so many businesses close now. They're on their knees and families paying those prices. More will be said that in due course, Kieran. I won't be making an announcement here and now.